I'm going to bring this meeting to order. Happy day before Valentine's Day. We'll start with the roll call.
Okay. Representative Adams. Here. Bailey.
Here.
Bauer. Bordelon. Here. Casper. Chase. Here. DeSiller Fleming. Here. Brickman. Here. Gustafson. Hanscom. Katowski. Lambert. Marley. Marshall. Martin.
Here.
Massett. McDermott. Melendez. Mello Miller. Merritt. Monahan. Newsom.
Here.
Oliver.
Present.
Pasqualini. Perry. Here. Powers. Here. Puccino. Quinn. Here. Richards. Here. Rogers. Stanford. Streeter. Irma.
Here.
James Streeter.
Here.
Strode.
Here.
Wagner, Washington.
Here.
Wells.
Here.
Whitehouse.
Here.
Whitney.
Here.
And Evan.
Here.
That's 27. We do have a resignation, fresh off the press, Representative Wagner.
Okay, we have a quorum, and I wanted to announce that Representative Wagner had stepped down from her position in District 4.
Yes.
So we'll be seeking a replacement for that.
We have a resignation. We have District 1 and District 4 now.
Yeah, openings in District 1 and District 4 in case anyone listening in TV land is interested. So I'd like to have you rise and have a moment of silence, please. Representative Washington, would you lead us in the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item is to approve the minutes. Is there a motion?
Second.
Is there a motion to accept?
I'm
Representative
sorry.
Mello Miller has made a motion, and it was firsted. Thank you. Is there any discussion? I had one point I just wanted to mention on page 2. It said that Moderator Evans stated that all members who are absent had contacted her to tell me of their absence, and I just wanted to note that Representative Marley did not contact me and has never contacted me about his absences. So if that could be amended, it would be helpful. Thank you.
Do you want me to include that statement?
No, it's fine.
all but Marley?
I didn't go through to see who had, but I would just know that that one was an outlier.
Well, in saying that, you should contact the
Yes,
the
please
moderator.
contact me if you're not going to make it, but I'm speaking to the ones who are here. Anyway, is there any other discussion? Any other? Okay. Seeing none, all in favor of accepting,
As amended?
approving the minutes as amended, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Representative Adams. Thank you. Thank you. The minutes are approved from our January meeting. The next item is citizens' petitions, and I believe I will read this, and I think that there may be some people who have signed, but I don't have the list.
Go ahead and start reading.
This is the portion of the RTM agenda where the RTM welcomes comments from citizens. Each presentation should be limited to 10 minutes or less, and citizens should, if possible, submit written comments. Presentations should be limited to matters pertinent to Groton. The moderator, or members through the moderator, shall ask questions only in order to clarify the speaker's presentation. Responses may be given by the moderator and/or by the town manager. Citizens should make their presentations from the lectern and state their names and addresses for the record. We have one person who has signed up, David Schultz. Thank you.
Oops.
No, right over there.
Well, hi, everybody. Thanks for looking at your time tonight. I'll try to be brief. My name is David Schultz. I live in Mystic, and I'm here on behalf of the organization of Groton RTM. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you state
Okay.
your address, please?
Yes.
For the record.
It's on 217. Accompanying me tonight are several other board members, as well as a number of our volunteers. I'll just give you a brief history of our organization. We started serving meals, Monday night weekly dinners, on about in 2014. We're an all-volunteer organization. Anybody who wants to attend is welcome to do so. We think most of our attendees are Groton residents, although we haven't really formally polled our residents on that.
There's like birds coming out of your microphone. It's a play they're having here.
Is this
at
a
the
little
senior
better?
center.
Let's hope so. I can usually speak pretty loudly, so if the mic's not working, I hope you can hear me anyway. So originally, we served our dinners in 2 different churches in the Groton area, depending on which night of the month it happened to be. And then about 2.5 years ago, we approached the town about the possibility of using this very facility here. And we worked out an agreement that really was of huge benefit to us for about 3 reasons. One, this is obviously a great facility. It's very comfortable. The location is perfect. We get lots of people are able to get here. We can arrange bus transportation for some of our guests. And finally, the kitchen is perfect for our needs. It's got the right size, the right capabilities. So it's really been a great partnership with the town, and not just with the town, but with Lamont, who's heads the staff that runs the kitchen. He and our head chef, Rob, have really worked out how to interact with one another. We try to be very sure that we don't leave anything behind that is going to impede the next day's work, and so on. So the only real issue for tonight is that we serve dinners on Mondays from 6 to 7 p.m., and in theory, that would be okay for your 7 p.m. meetings, except that we can't get everybody out of here by 7, and then we need about an hour to clean up back in the kitchen, which would be disruptive to your meetings. We don't want that to happen. It's not super quiet back there during the cleanup period. So the proposal that we've come up with, and we'd ask you to consider, is we would plan to start serving a half hour earlier on the Monday nights when you're holding your meetings. So we would serve from 5:30 to 6:30, and then if you could in turn push your start time back to 7:30, we could be out of here, have the tables all rearranged, and you go about your meeting at 7:30 instead of 7. We did have an alternative site a year ago. We used the Union Baptist Church, which is very helpful. The problem is we lost about 1/3 of our guests when we did that, and I think it's just a matter of the location, people's ability to get there. We have a lot of people that don't own cars. We have some homeless people, and for whatever reason, I think a lot of them found it much easier to get here on Monday nights than to the Mystic Union Baptist Church. So I can answer any questions if there are any.
So Representative Kwiatkowski?
You mentioned that some of the people aren't from Groton. Do you have an estimate as to how many actually are from Groton?
I don't. I don't know if anybody else has ever asked that question. We know it's most widely publicized in the Groton area, and recently we've put a sign up there, so it's local people going by that are most likely to know about it. Certainly we try to use word of mouth as a way to spread the information about this offering, but I don't know that exact percentage. Maybe that's something we could try to determine at some point.
So one thing I just wanted to say is that last budget season, I was aware that there was this conflict, and we were able to just use one Monday night. So at the very minimum, I will try to, not use Mondays. But as I mentioned to Mr. Schultz before, we have a very kind of constricted period of time in which we can pass the town's budget, and if you take Tuesdays out for town council and Fridays out because no one really wants to come here on a Friday night, and you also take Mondays, it leaves you with 2 days which are bearing a very heavy burden. So, I personally think that a 7:30 start time for the maybe 1 or 2 times that we meet on Monday during that month might be a really good compromise. But I will hear from Representative Powers.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So this is only during the budget period, correct? Okay,
Correct.
so how many nights is that impacting? Do you have
Well,
any ideas?
It sounds like
We
just
had
one or
one.
two.
Just one night?
We have to schedule it, we haven't, so they meet every Monday in that's why I said what I said.
Right.
So we were able to do it with one Monday last budget season. I can't say what it might be this budget season. Representative Streeter,
I was just going to suggest what you were suggesting.
use your microphone,
I'm
please.
sorry. I was just going to suggest what you were just stating, that we could arrange not to meet on Mondays. But I think also, if we do have to meet on one Monday, is there a reason we can't just push it up a half hour? Push it ahead.
Push it,
Back.
yeah. Representative Bordelon?
Yes, thank you for coming out. I think this is a great community event. I appreciate everything that you do. And as far as people not being from the town, when I used to volunteer with homeless shelters, I understand that a lot of people will travel where there's food at different times. So you might not be a Groton resident one day here. New London might serve you tomorrow night. I think it's appropriate for the RTM to make sure we're supporting people in need, and I'm in full support of it. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
And any other? Anyone else wishes to speak? No? Well, I think we can probably reach an accommodation. It sounds like we can minimize Mondays, and perhaps if we do, I will, let me just ask a show of hands if we do meet on a Monday in the month of May. Would that be a problem if we started at 7:30? Please raise your hand.
If it was a problem?
Excuse me?
If it's not a problem? Or
No,
if it-
raise it if it is a problem.
Okay.
Easier to count, hopefully. Okay, thank you. So I think we can reach an accommodation on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you guys for being flexible. I think this is a great thing our town does, so I'd like to. The next item on our petition is, on our agenda rather, is communications, and I just wanted to mention that I did receive communications from several members who were not able to be with us tonight. Representative Gustafson, Representative Stanford, Representative Marshall, Representative Casper, and Representative Pasqualini all contacted me and noted they weren't able to come. I did also receive a notice from the Groton Animal Foundation that was passed on to me today. And it said the Groton Animal Foundation is pleased to announce that we have provided $12,458 in medical support for the animals at the Groton Animal Control Facility in 2018. This included the treatment of 44 individual animals that were needed medical attention, and we were also able to provide funding for the spay, neuter, and vaccination of additional 23 animals prior to their adoption to loving homes. Our funding comes from many sources, ranging from private donations, fundraisers, grants from the Community Foundation of Eastern Connecticut and the Mystic Women's Club. In 2019, the foundation will continue its mission to provide medical care for animals under the care of the town of Groton, so that animals are happy, healthy pets for adoption into our community, and it's signed Donna Dusso, who's the president of that organization, so I pass that on. Did anyone else have communications they wish to relay at this time? Representative Washington, please.
I had a communication from Joan Butler about the same issue that David Schultz spoke on. I can't download it on my iPad, so I can't read it, but it was about the same issue that Mr. Schultz spoke about.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? No. Seeing none, we can ask Mr. Burt if he would give us his financial report.
Good evening. You shall have, there's reports over on the table if you don't have one, but the fund balance as of January 31st was approximately $18 million, which is 14.8% of the FYE 2019 general fund adopted budget, so we're right about where we want to be for the fund balance. The general fund contingency budget was originally appropriated at $450,000 with the current balance of $375,207, so we're doing well on that. And the capital reserve fund's currently at a fund balance of about $1 million. Just a couple other items of note. Gary Schneider and I met last week with Aquarion, their Aquarion Water. They're about to do some work in Mystic starting in March. We met with them just to make sure communication is good. They keep residents updated. We've asked them to keep us updated so we can put things in our weekly reports when things are happening. And they're going to touch base with the Mystic Chamber of Commerce along the way too. So they were very responsive. Mayor Granatowski and I met with Lieutenant Governor Bysewicz along with Keith Hedrick and several other elected officials just to talk about issues facing our communities, so that was a really good meeting. And looking at making some changes, we've been talking about this for a while, retirement options for new employees. I'm supposed to get a study in the next couple of days of some cost to it, comparing it to defined benefit. So if all goes well, we'll have a presentation on February 26th at our Committee of the Whole meeting. And we'll start by making changes to new non-union employees, and then we'll start working with unions on further changes. So it'll be that's a big priority of mine, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Representative Katowski, please.
Hi. Could you please provide a status on the River Road Bridge situation in District 5? Kevin Boggle has communicated with me regarding the condition of the bridge, and I told him I would bring it up at the RTM meeting. Thank you.
Sure. Me and several council members and Public Works have taken many looks at River Road. It's not one of our worst roads. It doesn't rank anywhere near the top of our worst roads. Though, speaking of ranking, unfortunately, we haven't done a rating study since, when was it, 2007, I believe. We're way overdue for that. That tells you where, a status for each of our roads. We're looking for a CIP for next year to update that, but River Road is not one of our worst roads. And the cost to do it's between $700,000 and $860,000, so you want to make sure it's really needed at the time it's done. And there is a flooding issue on that road in spots, so when we do it, we want to take our time and do it right and look at that issue too. But it's not to the point of needing it yet. But we are keeping I've been out there many times to drive it and look at it, along with Public Works.
Any other questions? Representative Bordelon?
Thank you. I was wondering if you could speak to the increase on the grand list that I saw come out.
Sure. I don't have all my notes with me, but the grand list I sent around to the RTM members. Hopefully everyone got that. The 2018 net grand list, we did go up 1.7%, which is I think it was the two previous years we went down a little bit each year. So that's fantastic. We'll get the narrative though in the next couple of weeks which will really explain all the detail on it. But everyone should have a copy. And as soon as I get that narrative, I'll forward it to everyone.
Thank you. No other questions? Representative Whitehouse?
I have one simple question on the grand list. Was there a reevaluation recently behind that, or is there actually more property in use in town?
More property use in town.
Okay.
Yeah. I think 21 is the next reval.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda, we have someone from the Economic Development Commission here to speak. I don't think it's Catherine Young.
Yes,
Oh, Catherine. There you are. I didn't see you before. Please come and speak.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Oh, good.
Do you need a PowerPoint?
If they're ready for us, I'm not clear on that.
No, it's on, I think. Oh, you don't have it?
Don't know what happened. Okay, so we'll go ahead without it, no problem.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yep. Thank you to the town manager, John, and staff, moderator Evans, and members of the RTM for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. We bring what we think is a unique and timely invitation in 2019 for the RTM. Under a Connecticut general statute, the Town of Groton codes, and a town council resolution, our Town Economic Development Commission is empowered to promote and develop the economic resources of the town, as well as its business and industrial resources. Specifically, it is charged to do three things: take the lead as emissary to other boards and commissions on economic development issues, be a positive influence at all times regarding the potential that Groton has to offer, And finally, to serve as a liaison to the business community and be a conduit back to the town manager and EDC staff with information and business concerns. So when the Office of Planning and Development Services received the 2016 Economic and Market Trends Analysis from its contract consultant, the EDC was eager to understand the final report and its recommendations for our new economic development strategy. The report enumerated an action plan with projects and initiatives, including the need to increase collaboration, connectivity, and networking, with the start of a formal business visitation program. And that's close quote. After discussions with John Reiner, hey John, and the OPDS staff, the EDC decided to make the business outreach program its top priority. And after the initial kickoff, the program evolved and improved. By early 2017, we began visits to existing businesses around town. Then we asked staff for a complete list of the retail, restaurant, service, and other businesses in Groton, and last year we streamlined our approach and efforts to target the downtown area. It's my pleasure to now introduce Dave Cody, Chair of the EDC Business Outreach Committee, who will show you a snapshot of all our businesses and explain our new Card for Card program.
Thank you.
Dave? All right, no problem. Thank you. Maybe what we'll do is send it out as an email.
That's fine, that would
Okay.
be perfect.
All
We
right,
can get
thank
it to
you.
everyone.
Our slides are on the wrong laptop, that's all.
Okay, no problem.
That's fine. Well, I'm going to start with a question, and that's the same question that we had to ask ourselves over 2 years ago when the EDC made the decision to form an outreach, business outreach program. And that question was, how many businesses do we have in Groton? Anybody know? Somebody's peeking. We didn't know, and nobody else knew. That was our first task. And what I'm going to show you, because I don't have a slide, which looks like a very simple bar graph of those 1,450 exactly businesses in Groton. Took a lot of months of work and poring over tax assessors' reports and culling out things like ATMs and non-operational entities. What's also important is the category of the business. So it's not just how many we have, but who are they? What's the demographics? You know, if you're in sales and you're in business, the first thing you want to understand is who's your customer, right? And from our viewpoint, the businesses are our clients, our customers that we're trying to serve. So I'm not going to bore you with the 2 years that ensued after that and all the details we went through and the different programs and ideas, but we visited in that time period roughly 70, 80 businesses. The process wasn't the easiest to use, and we were trying to collect too much data and make too much of it, too much analysis. And recently, in the past few months, this all boiled down to a much simpler program. We call it our Card for Card program, simply using the new postcard that EDC and OPDS produced last year. Very simple, to the point. We used to have flyers and all kinds of forms. And you can't do this wrong. It's that simple. The whole idea is to do the visit, the ambassador, the business, the personal relationships that we develop, and get a sense of pulse of what's happening with the businesses in the town, and how can we help them make Groton a better place for businesses to thrive and prosper. So there's a lot of programs on here. Again, not going to get into that detail. That comes during the training program. It's simply making the visit, making the business aware of the new website, and just as importantly, signing up for the email so they can be aware on a month-to-month basis what's going on in the town, what's the development, what's the news, you know? And there's a lot of exciting things that you don't read in the paper coming down the road quite soon. So that's the purpose of our program, and I'm going to turn this back over to Catherine. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dave. So to quote Paige Bronk, our Economic and Community Development Manager, business outreach is about building relationships and conversations with our local businesses. It's the best mechanism for checking the pulse of the business community. And thanks to Paige, the Groton Economic Development Commissioners participate in what's called CEDAS, or the Connecticut Economic Development Association. We learned from CEDAS that association member towns and cities throughout the state have made business outreach a priority too, because it succeeds in lifting local business climates. So in conclusion, we are hoping that you'll be interested, and you are invited to join us by becoming 2019 Business Outreach Ambassadors. And frankly, we're not asking everyone to do it. We're just asking those who might be interested in making some visits to some of the town businesses. And we sign up individually. So you just select which business you're interested in, and you go and make a visit, and you spend 5, 10, 15 minutes talking with the business owner or the manager or the person who is available. It is our goal to reach out and visit as many businesses as possible this calendar year. It's voluntary, it's fun, and brings the rewards of getting to know our entrepreneurs and businesses, large and small. EDC will provide a 1-hour orientation for all new volunteers, and our first orientation training is next Wednesday, February the 20th, from 1:30 to 2:30 at the Town Hall Annex. Other dates will be set as needed, obviously times as well. There will be evening times available, or whatever works best for our volunteers. A volunteer business outreach ambassador sign-up sheet is going to be passed around for you to add your name and contact email, so that we can get in touch with you directly to discuss your interest. And also, please keep a copy of the card. Just one thing to point out on the card, if you notice, that we have the town website specifically to promote business, which is called the exploremoregroton.com. How many of you are familiar with that?
We all have bottles from it. Right?
Okay, great. Okay, and one last question. Has everybody signed up to receive the monthly newsletter that the town sends out? Okay, you can do that. You just go on the website right here on the bottom, exploremoregroton.com, and it will show you where you sign up and subscribe. And once a month, Sam from the staff actually puts together a very insightful, interesting newsletter about what's going on around town, and it will keep us up to date.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Are there any questions of Ms. Young? Representative Whitehouse?
Just wanted to add a brief comment, because as liaison to the EDC, I've done some outreach for them.
Thank you, Michael.
And it's really enjoyable, because most of the business owners, when they see someone from the town, it's usually bad news. They're not used to someone coming from the town just say, how can we help? What are your opinions? And so you tend to get a very positive response when you meet these business owners. It's a great chance to really get on the ground, face to face with the people who are building this grand list for us, and to hear some of the issues and perspectives you might not otherwise hear. So I would highly encourage anyone who wants to kind of get another perspective on the town to join them in this process.
Thank you, Representative Whitehouse. And you know, we really appreciate your being a liaison to the EDC and being enthusiastic and stepping out and volunteering. You were the first one who did it for us, and so that kind of gave us encouragement to ask all of you to consider being volunteers. So you can put as much time in or as little as you're interested in. Thank you very much, Moderator.
I'm going to ask Mr. Reiner to come up. He's going to give us a brief update on economic development from the town's perspective.
Good evening, everyone. I'll try to keep this brief. I just wanted to touch upon what's going on with property redevelopments that we've been talking about. Myself, Paige Bronk, John Burt, and Keith Hendrick, the mayor of the city of Groton, gave a longer presentation a couple weeks ago on a Saturday morning at the Bill Memorial Library, and had a lot of interest from people. A few RTM members were there. So you've heard us talk about these, and again, to keep it brief, we've approached these in two different types of processes. One where we'll go out to RFP, where we do a lot of marketing, a lot of promotions, trying to maximize the benefit to the town and selecting the best proposal, and that's something that is usually just staff-led. The other way we can go about these is utilizing a broker to help market the property. The first property I want to talk a little bit about is the Mystic Oral School or the Mystic Education Center. Again, 80-plus acre property. It's been fully vacant since 2011. And, you know, I've come across town council minutes from the late 70s when the council was trying to figure out what do we do with this underutilized closed state school. So this is something that's been out there for a long time. We issued an RFP back in the middle of December of 2017, and since that time we've been working with a number of developers, taking the proposals that were submitted to us, working with the committee, bringing that down to a smaller group, and right now we're working with one preferred developer. I think I had said to the RTM previously, once we're going through this process, a development is not approved. That's done later. Right now we're trying to get a developer, basically selecting a dance partner for each one of these sites. The Mystic Oral School, we're in negotiations with one preferred developer, working with the state Department of Economic and Community Development, and we expect to have a public release of who that developer is and what they're proposing sometime in the next probably 3 months or so. Groton Heights, 244 Monument Street, another, and I should just say on Mystic Ed Center, the plan is to preserve the existing buildings that are still there, the historic buildings, as well as the recreation center, and there will be a recreation component open to the public worked into that proposal as things are moving forward. That's something that we have kind of let slip out there a little bit. Looking at Groton Heights, again, same RFP process that we put out there. That is a about 2-acre site, 27,000 square foot building. Building's been vacant since 2007. Preservation of the building is key to us. Did an RFP, selected, had a number of proposals, worked with a selection committee, and brought that down to one preferred developer, met with that developer in executive session with the town council, and I think we'll probably have a signed letter of understanding between the town and the developer sometime in the next 6 weeks. That one's going to go a little quicker because it's just the town working with the town property as opposed to the Mystic Oral School, which is a state property, so there needs to be a 3-party agreement on that. Again, preservation of the historic structure, working with the Bill Memorial Library, and that one is moving along well. 2 other properties I'll quickly touch upon. Gold Star Highway, 517 and 529 Gold Star Highway, approximately 12.5 acres in size in total. We issued an RFP on that back in 2016. We had a very well-qualified developer, and that deal fell through. There was a second and others, and we've been working with that second preferred developer for over 2 years now. We don't have a contract signed yet, but I think that's one we'll be able to announce also sometime in the middle of this year. And lastly, Sealy School Drive. We've been working with a broker on that particular property. That one had some other complexities to it. We've been trying to work with an abutting property owner there, looking for direct access on Route 12. That hasn't worked out to this point yet, so we decided to market the property just on our own, working with a broker. They're expected to get us a short list of proposals by the end of this month, and again, we'll have some type of selection committee working it down to a final preferred developer, working out some type of an agreement and understanding between the town and that developer. And then with all of these properties, they'll have to go through the town planning and zoning process, except for Groton Heights, which is in the city. That one, they'll go through the city planning and zoning process, and we'll see some things happening. I expect public announcements on all 4 of those properties during 2019. Some of them you'll see much sooner than later. So I just wanted to give a very brief, quick overview. I know you got a lot on the agenda tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions for Mr. Reiner? Representative Merritt?
Just briefly on the Mystic Oral School project, are we working with the state on marketing that?
Yes, we were the ones that were actually leading the marketing on that. They 2 or so years ago gave us a $50,000 brownfields grant to do some assessment, some marketing, work on the zoning that will need to be changed on the property eventually. We've been driving the bus on the marketing for that property. So right now we're actually working with a preferred developer. We don't have a contract signed yet.
But
So-
they're in agreement with our efforts, and
Yes.
it's more like, it's like a 50-50. We're not pushing the whole load.
No. So at this point in time, our town attorneys are working with the state's attorneys, with the developer's attorneys, trying to craft up an agreement. The state is completely on board with the developer that we've chosen for the property. It's been a very good working relationship.
We'll wait to see what's coming.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Reiner? Thank you, Mr.
All right,
Reiner,
thank
for
you.
coming and updating us. We'll look forward to when there's the next phase of this. The next item is a report from the superintendent of schools. I believe Deputy Superintendent Austin is here to speak with us. Thank you. Oh, and the chair. Would you like to speak as well, Kim? No? Okay. Sorry, I didn't.
Good evening, everyone. I'm prepared to talk to you a little bit more in depth about the Board of Education grant revenues that we receive. There was actually a chart that was in our budget book. I've added another chart. It looks like they've all gone out, but I will send you one digitally so that you'll have it and you can send it to any members. I wanted to start with kind of orienting you to the chart. At the top are our categorical grants, which we receive annually. There are federal grants that we receive, the title funds, Carl Perkins, IDEA for special ed, and I'll go into more detail on that. We did have an RTM member who had asked some questions of the superintendent, so I'm going to try to get to those and answer those specifically as well.
That particular member's not here tonight, but we'll have to pass this on to him.
Well, I think one member is, so. Yeah. And then the competitive grants, which we have received. And I can explain those in more detail as well. Those usually come in like 5-year packets, and they're released, the funding is released over that 5 years. So if we look at the categorical grants, starting with the Title I, which is a federal grant, it's really a grant that was delivered through the Elementary Secondary Education Act and amended by ESSA, which is Every Student Succeeds Act. So its real purpose is to ensure that all students have a fair and equal and significant opportunity to obtain high-quality education and reach the standards through the state. It's also a supplemental funding, and as you see, the Title I, Improving Basic Services for students from CK, CC, and Westside Middle School. So the schools that have the larger students from low-income families, you know, are the ones that we service. But there is a portion of that grant that is also district-wide. So we have other families and other schools that we're able to support as well. The Title II grant is mostly around professional development. A lot of that we've done with some social emotional support and some mental health. We've had students that have needed some extra support in that area and professional development. A lot of these grants do have some professional development, and that really helps with the sustainability of the grants. Title III is for our English language learners. There's professional development in that grant, supplies, some tutoring that goes on. The Carl Perkins and Title IV. And the Title IV grant, if you go across, it's annual grant. And this year, we received $71,978, and that was a significant increase from the 14,000 that we had received last year. So if you see that we have it broken out to what we've received this year, and then for FY20, it's just an estimate because the state will adjust those numbers, you know, depending on calculations that they use. So the Carl Perkins grant is a vocational education grant, and we have hired a Project Lead the Way teacher, and that grant is going to support that teacher. That also coincides with, later on I'll talk about the competitive grant, which is Department of Defense Education Activity related to STEM, and adding more careers program to our high school, which is a real need. We have a school readiness grant in early childhood, and we're really a pass-through, and we work closely with Children First Groton to support many children who are in preschools in our town, but not in the school. IDEA, which is the Federal Special Education Grant, most of that grant is really supporting some of the paraprofessionals that we hire through the IEP process. Bilingual education is just a small amount, and that usually goes for supplies, and that's because we have, when you have 25 or more of one speaking, so we have Spanish-speaking children at Fitch, you receive additional funding. And then there's a Department of Defense Supplemental Impact Grant from the Impact Aid that we receive, and it comes right to the board. The Board of Education, in the 5 years that I've been here, has really put this money towards technology. You know, we have the one-on-one Chromebook initiative that has been rolled out through the high school, so every student from 9th grade to 12th grade receives a Chromebook and that they can use both at school and at home, and that has been afforded by this grant. This grant is really intended for military children, but all of our children have access to this, and so we really try to provide technologies that will directly impact our kids. And then that usually rolls out to be about $260,000 each year. And this year, we haven't really allocated all that funding. It goes through the Board of Education, and then they determine how to use that depending on the needs in the district. That, like healthcare, has a reserve. So there is a reserve of about $990,000 in Department of Defense Impact Grant. As far as the Department of Defense Education Activity, the competitive grants, let me start with MSAP, which is Magnet School Assistance Program. We were awarded $4 million over 5 years to really create magnet schools in our 2 middle schools and to bring in the middle years program to our middle schools. And if you see the breakout and this grant lasts from FY18 to FY22. We spent last year, in the first year of the grant, it was about $500,000 for each of the middle schools to get it up and running. And if you see this year, between the middle years program at both Westside and Cutler, the STEM, Magnet, Westside, and the Arts and Humanities at Cutler, the entire amount that will come this year is $813,500. The majority of this grant is really for a lot of professional development for teachers. There's been a lot of equipment that we'll be able to bring to the new middle school in both schools. So we've had STEM labs built at Westside, and we have theater resources and a radio station built at Cutler, and all of this equipment will be transported to the new middle school. As far as the Department of Defense Education Activity grants, those are also grants that we have gone out and competitively gotten. The literacy grant was FY16 to 20. That was one of our first grants. I think we'd added technology DODEA before that. And that grant was a total of $1 million over 5 years. And as you see, the FY19 is $195,577, and this grant will wrap up the following year. So We have really one more year to go. This has afforded having Columbia University's Teachers College with embedded coaching for all of our staff for the rollout of both the Reading and Writers Workshop. The DODEA Math Grant was a grant that we received in the amount of $1.25 million, and it happened to be that year number 001 of about 575 grants. So we were really quite proud of that grant, and that has also been for professional development for teachers, to really help teachers K-12 have a better understanding of the mathematics and more approaches to teaching the mathematics so that they can meet the standards from the state and be able to be more prepared for SBAC testing and SAT testing. I think the real mission of all of these grants is to provide more rigor and relevance in our teaching and to make sure it's sustainable over time. The most recent grant was the STEM grant, and we were only able to choose two levels, so we chose elementary and high school. And the STEM grant includes the NGSS training, which is really necessary as we shift over to the science standards. And we will also be having enrichment and a science STEM camp for a week, like we've had the writing camp. We'll also have a STEM camp that is free of charge to all of our families. And the careers program came in with that as well. So one of the things that was asked is sustainability, and sustainability is very important. When you're given sums of money, and maybe for 5 years, how do you continue that without a real huge increase of cost? And the way you do it is much of the grants has been through professional development. We have a train the trainer models. Our teachers tend to train one another as well. So they've been giving all this, excellent education, and they are able to then share with one another. So if we have new teachers who come in, the mentor teachers and the teachers who have had this 5-year training will be able to train others. So that's really important. One of the things with grants, the rule for grants is that the federal grants is by law that they are to be supplemental and not to supplant. So supplemental means you build on, you add extra. So our schools like CC, CK, and Westside have additional funding, additional interventions. I didn't mention that, but intervention is a big part of each of these grants as well, to make sure that kids have that extra support. And to supplant means to replace, as if you were going to replace something in an operations budget. It should be definitely supplemental and not supplant. And I think that's most of it. But if you have questions.
Thank you very much.
I tried to answer the questions.
Yeah. Representative Powers?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a quick question.
Sure.
I'm going through these numbers here. So what you're saying is that these are supplemental, meaning that the numbers that we have here have to go into our schools all the time for our minimum budget requirement, correct?
No, this doesn't have anything to do with minimum
okay,
budget
that's
requirement.
perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But also that when we write a grant, which I've overseen the writing and also the delivery of these grants, you are writing for specific purposes. Most of the time the grant will tell you this grant is about such and such. So if you're afforded or awarded the grant, you have to make sure that you are doing exactly what you said. And so we track data, we monitor our kids' progress, we have to report back. So it's another accountability system, to tell you the truth. But I have found that they've been a great vehicle to get supplemental goods and supplies and technologies for our kids. Mm-hmm.
Representative Washington?
The Title I grant that says improving basic services, can you tell me more about what do you mean by improving basic services for
Sure.
the at-risk students?
So I'll give you a couple for instances. One of the areas of concern for all of our schools was to have additional social work support. And so each of our schools, Westside, Claude Chester, and Catherine Kolnowski, have a social worker who's paid for through these grants. And that's one of the areas that can be chosen. They also have tutors in literacy and mathematics, sometimes 2 each at all those schools, to help support our students. They have provided all kinds of extra supplemental activities. They've had Ness come in, for instance, at Claude Chester and do all kinds of enrichment for the kids, and they've had field trips. So the principals really look at their funding that is specific to their school, their kids' needs, and their interest to help support them with these additional resources. They also do a lot with communicating with families, so there's always a parent piece in each of those grants, so an outreach to provide some literacy workshops for families, math workshops, a chance to have more family math nights where kids come with their parents. They are able to provide babysitting so parents can come, or they'll come to the parents, but those funds are in there so that teachers after school or in the evening can work with families too to help support, which I think is really important.
Representative Mello Miller.
First of all, thank you for my new word of the day, supplant. I'll have to use that when I go home tonight with my husband. But just a quick clarification. So we have the FY19 and the FY20 estimated, and I noticed some big differences in the numbers, but if you're saying they're grants, so you've already planned ahead 5 years, is that correct? So
exactly.
So for instance, like with the MYP IB the International Baccalaureate Middle Years program, you go from 130 to 89. So you're already planning out, we're going to need 130 grand this year, and then, okay, so I just wanted a clarification on the differences in those
I can
numbers.
add a little piece to that.
Sure.
Many of these grants, what we do is we put more upfront cost money so that we can get these rolling and get the supplies you need. They often are, it's a requirement that you have a grants coordinator. They get a little stipend, so we have people who work to oversee these grants, to make sure everything is happening the way that it's said, and to help collect some of the data and give these reports back, usually 4 times a year on every grant.
Thank you. Are there any other? Representative Bordelon?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you, Mrs. Austin, for coming out and explaining the grants and revenues. Once again, the Title I grants, closing the achievement gap is, really is what is needed, and I only can say that there's still more to be done. I can only speak from the West Side school because that one I have a child attending. As far as the MSAP grants, the magnet school in the middle years, looking at that amount and thinking of 2023 and the sustainability of that, that's a hefty load despite teacher enrichment and training. And from some of the meetings I attended several months ago where principals spoke out about the magnet elementary schools and the lack of things they had at their disposal to maintain the magnet school sustainability, I just hope that we are not going to let that happen again, and that we can put a name on something, but you have to fund it to its max.
I agree. Thank you.
Representative Katowski.
Thank you for sending me the information this week. I typically don't comment about academic things. I pretty much try to stick to the money part of the RTM, so I'm kind of not comfortable with this, but how are we doing? For example, in December, we were talking about how we're doing within our light communities, our DIRGs, okay? But how are we doing? Are our kids meeting the state goal? One thing that might be interesting is to know how a school is doing over a 10-year period, not individual children or individual labels on people, but like how is Claude Chester doing now compared to 10 years ago? And are our kids meeting the state goal regardless of light communities?
Well, that would probably be a whole evening presentation because we have not had a 10-year stretch using the Common Core and the SBAC, which is the testing that is used through the state of Connecticut. It is just in the past 5 years that we've really had some tracking, and we are keeping track. It's really important. One of the goals of this assessment is to monitor student growth. Every single student, are they growing? And there are target numbers, but that is really a presentation I'd be happy to come back with, but it's pretty comprehensive. So I can show you how that works. The new science test, we had a pilot last year. This year will be the first year that 5th graders, 8th graders, and 11th graders actually take this new science test kind of for real, because it was just piloted last year. So it'll take a few years before you're really able to gather that kind of growth model data, but we still continuously look at it.
It seemed as though from the presentation in December that the expectations for Groton students was lowered because of our light community status. Is that true?
No, I would never say that. I would say that our student performance stands up to the DIRG, to the state, and certainly through the alliance districts. And we want to continue to see growth. Nobody
but I want
is
us to be
satisfied.
better than the alliance district.
I do too. I want them just to continue to grow.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
absolutely.
One more. Representative DeCillier Fleming, please.
Thank you. One of the things that I heard talked about a lot was the professional development. With teachers being the people on the front line and that whole reflective practitioner, what information are you gathering from them after the professional development to understand from the teachers what is working versus what isn't?
That's a great question.
I'm a teacher, so.
Oh, okay, that's a great question. So for each of our professional developments, whether they're grant-related or operational-related, we do a Google survey that has specific questions that address the professional development and ask what are some next steps, what are some things you're looking for. We also, by state statute, have a Groton Teaching Learning Collaborative that has representation K-12. We meet once a month and after school. So the high school and middle school meet, and then the elementaries meet. And they really discuss a long-term plan and then short-term, what are some changes and needs that they have. Through the grants specifically, though, there are all kinds of data that we collect, including efficacy reports, surveys around the staff development. So we keep really close track. Even when our kids come to camp, we give them and their parents a survey to see how it's going.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've already spoken once, but you can speak one more time really quickly.
I just have a question on professional development. Do the paraprofessionals get professional development?
Yes. With our new initiative with Teaching Learning Days, which are early release days, our paraprofessionals come in August for time to work on particular skills, and we work closely with the union to see what some of those are, what they're requesting. And then on the Teaching Learning Days and the November day, they also receive support. So, it's one of those things we're continuously looking to them to see. Sometimes it's curriculum related and they join the teachers. Sometimes it's around social, emotional wellness and techniques they can use. And that also can be with teachers, or it can be alone. So we do make sure that the paraprofessionals, they're a very important part of our school community, and they have that direct contact with their kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is liaison reports. Representative Melendez, do you have a town council report to share? Thank you.
Hey, there on the January 8th meeting, there was a canceled CIP from 2017. It was a CIP project for the intersection at Kings Highway and Bridge Street. It was, I guess now it's considered that it would end up being a maintenance burden, so they decided that to cancel it instead of going forward with it. There was also the CAFR, which stands for Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. They approved to accept and file that, which it's just an annual audit that's mandated by state statute and the town charter. They also approved the application for a brownfield assessment grant concerning the two TIF districts, the one at Center Grind and the one at Five Corners. They scheduled a public hearing for the March 5th Town Council meeting. That's concerning the Small Cities Community Block Grant. And they need to have a public hearing before the application is due. Then they approved the application for two State of Connecticut Department of Education grants. One was for materials, I believe, and the other was for like counselors in the schools. And then there was a $9,000 supplemental appropriation from the Capital Reserve Fund, and that was to finish the Shinnecock Golf Course, the ramp and the deck. And then there was a tax deferment for certain individuals affected by the federal shutdown. And yeah.
Thank you very much. Representative Bordelon, do you have a Board of Ed report?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I don't have much to report. I did attend the Monday, February 4th meeting, and that was the Town Council Board of Ed RTM liaison meeting. There wasn't definitive numbers given. There wasn't a budget yet. It was just a roundtable discussion, basically, about what people were feeling. I don't have really much to report on that. I mean, I'm sorry. I apologize. Correction. Monday, the 4th, was a budget meeting at the annex at central office. Yes, I think, if I have my dates right. Yes. And then the liaison meeting, at that meeting, it was just a breakdown of the budget. Different lines were given. And the 6th on the Wednesday was the RTM Board of Ed liaison meeting, which, like I said, there was nothing really to report at this time.
Thank you very much.
If anybody is interested in joining teacher on the end here, I'll keep asking you.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that call for anyone who would like to share the duties of the Board of Ed liaison. Just consider it. You can contact me offline.
I think I mailed out, Dr. Grainer sent us a PowerPoint, and I mailed that to all the RTM from that meeting. Yeah, he did, right?
Okay, good. Representative Wells, the Golf Advisory Committee.
We had a meeting.
Use your microphone, please.
I think I'll go up to the podium.
Okie dokie. Yes, please.
I had a meeting on Monday, February 4th, and we'll get the bad news out of the way. January golf revenues were down for the month of January compared to previous Januaries, which they attributed to cold weather. You may recall we suffered similar fate with rainy weekends in the fall. However, I have on, not from the meeting, but from our postman who plays Shinnecock, said the warm weather last week, the course was mobbed. So I think we'll make it up in the warm weather. The golfers, even though it's cold, they want to play. On the marketing department, the Facebook, which is probably has gone, their followers have gone from 873 to 886, and I assume when the weather warms up and people's minds turn to golf, there'll be some further interest in that. They spent a lot of time, they're right now discussing, and they were going over fees and what to charge for the course. One change is they've done away with the 10-play purchases. People would be buying a series of 10-play coupons rather than taking out a membership in the course, and they decided, well, you know, either buy the round or get a membership. They're adding an associate member for those aged 22 to 35 at a reduced rate, and hopefully bring in some people who are We're not old retired folks with nothing to do but play golf to come and extra cash to come out and play. Let's see, where are we? Where are we? Otherwise, there were discussions of setting up a memorial plaque. Apparently, a number of golfers like to see their friends memorialized on their deceased golfers memorialized. So they're going to try to set up a memorial garden where you can purchase a plaque for some substantial amount of money for the deceased golfer. They did say there was one case where they actually assembled on the green and spread former golfers' ashes on the green. It stuck to people's shoes and on the golf balls. I suggested that maybe they want to plant them in the bunker thing. Fred will spend eternity in the sand trap and never get out. But the good news is the state coordinator for historic properties, or historic register coordinator for the state, has returned from maternity leave, has looked over the golf course, at least from the online stuff, and said she thinks it's entirely, very likely, that Shinnecossett will be able to get on the National Register of Historic Places. They have a special category for recreation, and she actually has experience with a course on Truro on the Cape that similarly got on the historic register. She had about 5 or 6 questions about the course, and the manager said, "Yeah, no problem, I can get those answers." So it looks like it's going to happen. The only real hitch is that to get the skilled people who write up the proposals and the applications, that costs $10,000. There are grants to cover half of that. So the only real problem is coming up with the $5,000. They may approach the members and see if anyone wants to contribute. But this should help with the marketing for the course, and unlike a lot of historic properties, it's not a case of repurposing some decrepit old building and figure out what can we do with it. This is a golf course, always was a golf course, it will continue to be a golf course. And so there's no problem with how can we find another use for this. So anyway, that's, we'll know more. Looks good for getting on the National Register.
Thank you. Representative Whitehouse, do you have anything from the Economic Development Commission?
Well, I pretty much brought the Economic Development Commission here, so I think I think they covered it.
Thank you. Now we're going to move on to Finance Committee. I believe they had a meeting. Representative Washington, would you like to read the minutes? You can come up.
The Finance Committee was called to order at 6:30 p.m. on January 23rd, 2019 by Chairperson Beverly Washington. Meeting was held in Classroom A at the Groton Senior Center. Members present, Representatives Roseanne Kotowski, Robert Martin, Clarence Casper, Wilma Lambert, and Autumn Hanscom. Members absent, Representative Bruce McDermott. Others present, Representative Kathy Chase, Representative Karen Adams, and I spelled her name wrong, it's Karin. Town Manager John Burt, Finance Director Cindy Landry, and Town Clerk Betsy McCalsha. Unfinished business, none. New business, Power of Initiative, 2% tax increase. Motion for Section 4.5 Power Initiative of the Town Charter and Rule 9.4 power of initiative of the RTM rules that any increase over 2% in tax increase in 2020 and future budgets does not come from taxpayers or fund balance. The motion was made by Representative Katowski, seconded by Representative Martin. Discussion. Representative Katowski read to the committee a prepared statement. Per section 4.5, power of initiative of the town charter, and rule 9.4, power of initiative of the RTM rules, I am submitting a form of power of initiative. Resolution proposing to the town council that any increase over 2% in tax increase in the 2020 and future budgets does not come from the taxpayers or fund balance. That any increase in the 2020 budget and future budgets that results in a tax increase in excess of 2% should be funded through decreasing existing services, salaries, benefits, CIPs, and other applicable line items. By the RTM's power of initiative, the purpose of the power of initiative is to begin the process of controlling spending. Taxes have increased a staggering 20% in the past 4 years. The final 2019 adopted budget was $125,856,730, a $5,041,359 or 4.2% increase from the FYE 2018 adopted budget. 2.3% came from the taxpayers and 1.9% came from other money. The Power Initiative proposes that in 2020 and future budgets, 2% of the yearly tax increase comes from the taxpayers, and any additional increase amount come from other money excluding fund balance. Why did the town spend $5,041,359 more in 2019? Mostly due to benefits and CIP increases. It was a mistake for the town to increase spending $5,041,359 after a 8.7% tax increase the year before. This is not sustainable. Something must be done to control spending. Sending a resolution to the town council by the RTM proposing a 2% tax increase, including debt reduction and excluding using fund balance, would be a significant step in changing the culture of spending in Groton. At some point, there needs to be fiscal constraint. We are at that point. We must control spending increases to reasonable levels. We cannot have and do everything. There must be priorities. The town must identify needs and wants and eliminate all wants and items and positions that are nice to have. If we must have employees with the current high salary levels and over-the-top benefits, then we will have to have less of them. Vacated positions shall not be filled. Unfortunately, the town is not following that policy and just filled a public works vacated position. The RTM has the opportunity to support the taxpayers, control spending, and send a resolution to the town council that while the budget can increase more than 2%, only 2% of the increase per year should come from the taxpayers. There was a discussion on the tax rate and mill rate. What do we mean by 2%? Is the mill rate or overall tax rate? Is 2% a reasonable amount? There are variables we can't anticipate, so why restrict ourselves to 2%? What would happen if taxes did not increase over 2%? What are we willing to cut? It is a challenge because we have set costs that have been negotiated, such as staff salaries, benefits, etc. Discussion about employee benefits and what can be done to change employee benefits, which are negotiated. We can't change current employee benefits, but future benefits can possibly be changed. We discussed if you had a 2% budget, which services would likely be cut, and they would likely be human services, parks and recreation, library, and outside agencies. Should some things be excluded, such as debt services, special education? There was a discussion on the Board of Education budget. It makes up 70% of the town budget, but RTM must maintain Board of Ed MBR. Estimated that about 25% of students in Groton are military. We pay $14,500 per student, but the military does not reimburse us anything close to that amount. John Burt stated that so much of the budget on the revenue side depends on the state, and the questions for thought are, how would the 2% affect us? Is 2% of the mill rate or taxes? Can we phase in the restriction over a period of time? We would need to rewrite the language of the initiative if we decided to move forward with this. We will table this motion until the next meeting. Motion to postpone this motion until the next meeting, made by Representative Martin, seconded by Representative Katowski. In favor were Representatives Lambert, Haskam, Casper, and Washington. No one opposed. The next item on the agenda was to develop a guideline for the RTM Finance Committee monthly report. Motion to develop a guideline for the RTM Finance Committee report to the entire RTM. I forgot to write down who made that motion. So,
I think you did.
Yeah, I don't have it here. Anyway, the discussion. Part of the proposed revised charter revision last year suggested the elimination of the RTM. In December 2018, Representative Kate Richards, the leader of the Democratic Caucus, held a meeting to discuss concerns the public had about the RTM. Members present at the meeting suggested that the RTM receive more financial information. Moderator Eben referred this item to the Finance Committee. The RTM Finance Committee discussed exactly what information the RTM wanted, other than what the town manager gives in his monthly report. The committee discusses, instead of having to create a new report, the idea was raised to share an existing report with us. Finance Director Landry will give the RTM the same monthly report giving to the town council. Also, the committee will receive and review a quarterly narrative report prepared by Finance Director Landry. The committee discussed the need to know what the RTM specifically wanted reported, what will we do with this information, and how will it help us to make decisions going forward. What is the overall goal of these reports? The committee decided to review the report given monthly and quarterly to the town council, then see if any additional information is needed. The next item on the agenda was the town manager's PowerPoint presentation. The town manager went over his presentation given to the entire RTM on January 9th, 2019. The committee discussed the budget process. The RTM must finalize the budget by May 25th, 2019. Representative Casper reviewed his handout on the grand list with the committee. Consideration of committee referral items as per a referral list, none. However, a request by a committee member to ask Moderator Eben if the committee could discuss a letter written by Carl Perizzotti dated December 13, 2018. Next meeting, Thursday, February 28th at 6:30. Motion to adjourn made by Representative Lambert, seconded by Representative Martin. Vote was unanimous. Meeting was adjourned at 8:45 p.m.
Thank you. We have minutes. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Representative Adams. Second? White House. Is there any discussion? Representative Newsom. I'm having mind blanks.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Just a couple questions of clarification. The first one on the 2% motion. It says motion is made to postpone until the next meeting. Is that the next meeting of the Finance Committee or the next meeting of the RTM?
Next meeting of the Finance Committee.
Okay, thank you. And the second question I had was...
I believe that's going to be February 28th, so in case you want to go.
Thank you very much. The second question I had was the meeting that Representative Richards held with regards to concerns that people had with the RTM. What meeting was that? Can somebody refresh my memory? I don't remember that.
It was a meeting of just it was like a caucus.
The Democratic caucus.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Burt?
We can't change current employee benefits, but future benefits can possibly be changed. You could change future or current employees, you just have to negotiate it, so that sentence is incorrect there. So it was mischaracterized, but you can do, yeah, just like an example would be Bob Zagami just finished up the last union contract, changing people over to the high deductible health care, so that's something we changed on existing employees. It just has to be negotiated. So.
Thank you for clarifying that. What? Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those minutes are approved. Thank you, Representative Washington. Those were nice and thorough, and I appreciate your guys' service. The next item is the Community and Development Services. Representative Oliver, do you have the minutes and the summary of that blight ordinance? Thanks.
All right, the RTM Community Development Service Committee meeting was called on Tuesday, February 5th, 2019 at 7:05 at the Groton Public Library by Chairman Oliver. Committee members present were Reps. Perry, Hanscom, Newsom, Oliver, and Strode. Committee members absent, Rep. McDermott. Also present, John Reiner, Director of Planning and Development Services, and Rep. Richards. Quorum was declared. New business, Blight Ordinance Amendment 2018-86-9. Motion move discussion was Rep. Oliver made the motion and seconded by Rep. Newsom. Discussion, John Reiner, Director of Planning and Development, gave a brief overview of the ordinance, its history, and the reason for its proposed amendment. The original ordinance was passed by the Town Council in 2013 by an amendment, but an amendment was proposed to make some needed adjustments and changes some of the language related to the enforcement, as well as adding specific language about junk and debris. Overall, he explained that the point of the ordinance is not to seek out blight issues, but to respond to complaints as they come in and work directly with the property owner. He worked with the town attorney to come up with the language changes. It was reviewed by the town council. A public hearing was held on December 4, 2018. In response to questions raised about past enforcements and fines, Reiner noted that only recently has there been a situation that potentially requires a fine. He has also emphasized that their protocols is to always contact the property owners and work with them to sort out or fix the problem first instead of initiating a fine. Rep. Hanscom and others asked for clarification about the areas are covered by the ordinance. John explained that the ordinance does not apply within the boundaries of Groton Long Point or the city of Groton because of the building inspector. Rep. Newsom asked if research has been done about how other towns in the area have handled blight issues, and Reiner explained that his ordinance is similar to the norm. A motion is made by Rep. Oliver to move to vote, seconded by Rep. Strode. Voting in favor was Reps. Oliver, Newsom, Strode, Perry, and Hanscom. None opposed and abstaining. Motion adjourned by Rep. Oliver, seconded by Newsom. Voting in favor was Rep. Hanscom, McDermott, Newsom, Oliver, and Strode. Meeting adjourned at 7:36 p.m.
Thank you. Any questions or clarification desired by members? Is there a motion? Sorry. Getting tired here. Motion to approve, Bordelon. Representative Bordelon, is there a motion, a second? Representative Newsom? Thank you. Now, is there any questions? No. Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes of the Community Development and Services Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those minutes are approved. Thank you. Do you have a motion? Is there, you don't, so the way it is, this is a ordinance that was passed by the town council, so it's gone through committee. The only action that we can take at this body is by a 2/3 majority to veto it. Is there any motions that anyone would like to make at this time to that effect? Other than that, we can move on to the next item. Thank you. All right. The next item on our agenda is the Education Committee. Chairman Whitney, would you like to give a summary of your minutes, please?
Thank you. RTM Education Committee met on February 7th at 7 p.m. at the Groton Senior Center, Classroom A. The attendees of the committee are Representative Whitney, that's me, Bailey, DeCillier Fleming, Frickman, and Gustafson, and other attendants in attendance with Superintendent Michael Grenier. 7:05 was called to order. 7:06 with the roll call. Representatives Bauer, Bordelon, Quinn, and Rogers were absent. The committee had quorum with 5 of 9 members present. So 7:07 we began our new business, and item number 1 is 2018-572-3, the contingency transfer Board of Education FYE 2019. Motion by Representative Whitney to recommend approval of the amendment of, approval of 2018-572-3 contingency transfer Board of Education FYE 2019. Seconded by Representative Frickman and discussed. Is approved 5-0 and there are no abstentions. Voting in favor were Representatives Bailey, DeCillier, Fleming, Frickman, Gustafson, and Whitney. Voting against were none. And here's the resolution. So, resolution approving a contingency transfer to the Board of Education, whereas the Board of Education has received an increase to the FYE 2019 Education Cost Share grant for costs incurred in FYE 2018 for students from Puerto Rico displaced by Hurricane Maria, and whereas the Board of Education has been notified that Groton is in non-compliance for the 2018-2019 minimum budget requirement, MBR, by the amount of the increase to ECS, and whereas the impact of the FYE 2019-2020 MBR related to this increase to the FYE 2019 ECS is unknown at this time, be it resolved that $17,683 is transferred from the general fund contingency function number 1074 to the Board of Education function number 1080 to meet the minimum budget requirement MBR for FYE 2019 and referred to the RTM for approval. The Superintendent Grenier reported that 6 students were supported with these funds. If this transfer is not approved, a 200% penalty will be assessed by the state. If similar state funds related to Hurricane Maria are not appropriated for next year, the minimum budget requirement will return to the previous amount. And that's what we have on this section. Would you like me to make a motion to approve?
Are those your minutes?
That's to this section. I wonder if we wanted to vote on this.
Yeah, read all your minutes and we can approve
Okay.
them at once. Yeah.
So item number 2 is resolution requested Board of Education attendance. And motion by Representative Whitney to recommend approval of the resolution requested Board of Education attendance. Seconded by Representative Bailey, discussed. Defeated 1-4, no abstentions. Voting in favor, Representative Bailey. Voting against, Representatives DeCillier, Fleming, Frickman, Gustafson, and Whitney. And here's the resolution. Whereas it is the duty of the RTM to exercise oversight on behalf of the citizens of Groton, including over the Board of Education, and whereas the value of the televised RTM meetings to create transparency in town operations is great, and whereas Superintendent Grenier has been gracious and helpful in accepting and addressing questions brought by RTM members on behalf of their constituents, which has been of great value to the town, and whereas a message from the chair of the Board of Education to the moderator of the RTM suggested that Superintendent Grenier may no longer be regularly attending the RTM meetings, be it resolved that it is the opinion of the Groton RTM that, in the interest of continued transparency and positive relationships, the superintendent, Chair of the Board of Education, or a designee should attend every RTM meeting as often as it is possible, and that not to do so could be a step backwards in transparency and accountability. This resolution was introduced by Representative Whitehouse at the January 9th, 2019 RTM meeting in response to an email from Board of Education Chair Watson that moderator Evan read under the communication portion of the meeting. Committee members emphasized the importance of communications between the Board of Education and RTM at televised public meetings. Some members believe the resolution is unnecessary given the past record of communication and the lack of real teeth in resolution wording. Superintendent Grenier stated that it is my intention to continue the open communication that I have enjoyed. At 7:40, we adjourned, and that was a unanimous vote. And those are the minutes.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Representative Bordelon, is there a motion to second? Representative Washington? Any questions? Representative Kotowski?
I just have a question as to how that resolution got to the Education Committee. So it went from Representative Whitehouse to you to the Education Committee?
Yeah, he actually said it on the floor, and we had a motion. We had a motion to suspend the rules at the last meeting, which failed. So he brought that motion in writing to us, and I referred it to the Education Committee. That's exactly how it occurred. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as read by Chairman Whitney, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those are approved. Thank you. Do you want to, before you go, we need to, I think.
A couple items there.
Yeah, we need to vote on it. So if you want to make the resolution for the contingency transfer, you'd like to put that motion on for us, please?
Right. I move that we approve 2018-572-3 contingency transfer, Board of Education, FYA 2019.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to approve the contingency transfer to the Board of Education. It's been seconded. Is there any questions or discussion? Representative Bordelon?
I just had a quick clarification. Is it -3 or -4?
4.
I have 4 here. Did you say 3? I just want to make sure I'm reading. I'm sorry?
I've got -3.
Oh, yeah, so I'm a little confused. I want to make sure we have the right numbers.
Right, when it went to committee, it was 3. When it comes to this floor, it's 4. It's your legislative program.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions, clarification? Seeing none, all in favor of the resolution approving a contingency transfer to the Board of Education, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. That motion passes. Thank you. Do we have to put that on? That without fail? Okay. So let's see. Let me move back here. The next item on our agenda is Chairman Streeter and Public Safety. We have the Connecticut Office of Policy and Management's Justice Assistance Grant.
The RTM Public Safety Committee met on January 31st, 2019 at the Groton Senior Center to review the Town Council Referral 2018-579, State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management's Justice Assistance Grant, which was referred to the committee on January 9th. Members present were Representatives Adams, Pasqualini, Powers, Richards, and Streeters. Members absent, Representative Pacino. A quorum was declared. Also present was Chief Louis Fazzaro. Meeting called to order at 7:01 p.m. Discussion, Chief Fazzaro explained that the $15,000 grant was fully funded through the State of Connecticut's Office of Policy and Management Justice Assistance Grant Program. The monies for the grant were received through the distribution of FYE 2015 and 2016 federal grant funds. The Town Police Department will utilize the monies from the grant to purchase an Auto View Sharp X license plate reader, which will replace two older and less efficient license plate readers, reading system previously purchased by the department. The unit will be mounted inside police vehicles, will be used to photographically capture and process license plate numbers to help quickly identify stolen and/or unregistered motor vehicles. It will also process the license plates to determine if the owner/operator of the vehicle is wanted for any crimes not only in the state of Connecticut but nationally. It will also be useful in cases of amber and silver alerts. Annual service and maintenance fees of approximately $1,600 will be included in the annual budget. Motion to approve resolution authorizing the State of Connecticut Office Policy and Management Grant Justice grant was made by Chairman Streeter, seconded by Representative Adams. Committee vote, 5 in favor, 0 opposed. Motion to adjourn by Representative Pasqualini, seconded by Representative Powers. Vote was 5-0. The committee adjourned at 7:25 p.m.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Representative Powers, second by Adams. Thank you. We have those minutes. Are there any questions that members have? No. Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes of the Public Safety Committee, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Madam Moderator, I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing the State of Connecticut Office of Policy and Management Justice Assistant Grant.
Second. We have a motion on the floor. It's been approved to authorize the State of Connecticut's Office of Policy and Management's Justice Assistant Grant, which will allow the purchase of an Auto View Sharp X license plate reader. Is there any questions? Representative Katowski.
Hi. I support the police as much as anybody else and probably even more. And so I appreciate all their service. And in your professional opinion, what is the actual impact of one of these?
They have two now. This will be one. This one unit will replace two antiquated systems, so we will only have one system now. Your question was, how does it impact having two?
No, I thought, maybe I misunderstood. Is this for one car?
This is one unit that is universal enough to switch into different vehicles.
But it can only be used by one car at a time?
That's correct.
I have a question, actually. What are the service fees that we pay now on the two license plate readers that we currently have?
I do not know.
Okay. So we don't know really what the impact on the budget will be?
No, I don't.
Okay. Representative, Mr. Burt?
I was just going to add that the intent is, though, they want to seek future funding for more of these. They don't want to stop just at one, but just so you know, that is the intent.
And each one is $1,600 a month in...
Not a month. It's
what?
A year.
Oh, a year. Got it. Thank you. A year. Representative Richards?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I just wanted to contribute. I think I remember from our meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the question was asked about the current fees and that we weren't paying fees currently because they weren't really in condition to be used very much. So that wasn't a part of it.
That's correct.
So we do have two license plate readers, but they're not usable?
We're not currently paying fees on them. Thank you.
Basically, they're not usable.
What are license plate readers used for?
It's just what I explained. They will be mounted.
Yeah, I understand that.
They'll be mounted in the vehicles.
Yeah,
Travel down the road. They'll read license plates. They can. One example: one car, the police car could be doing 60 miles an hour, and a car could be coming in at 100 miles an hour. They can read the license plate, capture the image of that license plate, but it also can capture up to 4 photographs in a second. So it can read vehicles as they're traveling down the road.
So it's for apprehending speeders?
It's not specific if it's speeders, no. It's for reading those license plates. It will provide the officer the ability to, the communications will come out that particular license plate, the owner of that vehicle is wanted, not wanted. That vehicle is specifically a stolen vehicle from the state of Connecticut or some other state within the United States.
Or it's just Jim Streeter.
Representative Whitehouse?
So in layman's terms, you could set this up at a busy intersection. It'll see every license plate coming by, and it could flag one that is stolen or wanted or silver alert or something like that. Is that the idea?
It could be stationary or mobile.
Okay, but it'll catch every car they're going past.
That's correct.
So they could find an Amber Alert vehicle just by driving past it. Is
That's
the point.
correct.
All right. Thank you.
Representative Wells?
I read the proposal, and it made no mention of privacy concerns. So I have a question. The questions I have are, how long is this data going to be kept? Are they going to have records on all of us, or are they just going to, and how long is it going to be kept, and who might this information be shared with? Does this 30 days, they say, the car isn't stolen, or maybe we want to find out where he was last year? I don't, there really is, there didn't seem to be any mention of that.
There is a time limit, according to the chief, there is a time period of how long they will keep the records. However, if it's a stolen vehicle, that record is always on until it's found.
Certainly.
Same with Amber Alerts, same with
I'm
the silver
thinking,
alerts.
you could, easily, use this to troll bars or places where the evil people's lounge.
Well, it's not going to come back. It's not going to come back and say, yeah, that car belongs to Gary Wells and he's inside having a drink. It's not used for that. It's used to identify wanted people, stolen cars, unregistered vehicles, Amber Alerts, things of that nature.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking the usual is you have somebody with an expired license and they're silly enough to drive over the speed limit or run through stop signs, and we read about them in the paper. But is this like, going to be, okay, now they have to say, well, the guy was driving with a glazed look on his lips, pull him over and check him out. In this case, they can just, check out people. Maybe why is this person in this neighborhood? He seems to live across town, that kind of stuff. Now, that's the, it's just none of the privacy issues were mentioned. And it did say, they're going to hold on to the stuff for a period of time?
Yes.
That helps. Because apparently this stuff can be shared with, repo men and God knows who.
Again, it's only going to flag those vehicles of wanted people, stolen vehicles, unregistered vehicles, Amber or Silver Alerts. That's the one that's going to flag. It's not going to, every car say, that's Jimmy Streeter, that's Gary Wells, that's Irma Street or whatever. It's not going to do that for everyone.
Okay, so it's not going to be as bad as Facebook, say.
Mr. Burt, would you like to clarify this?
And just as a reminder, we had to, and we never had any reports of abuse from using those two, so it's not a difference.
Have they ever been used, though?
They had been, yeah, they're just out of date now. Just like when your computer gets old, it's just time for a new
I just want to go back and kind of follow up on what you just said to Representative Wells. Are they not meant to catch speeders then? Because you didn't list that in your...
They are not used to catch speeders. That's your radar units and things of that nature.
Okay. Representative Mello Miller?
Just to answer Representative Wells' point, I think that as long as you're following the law and you keep your car registered, that I think you're going to be okay. I don't think the police are concerned, like Representative Streeter said, who's at the bar on a Friday night or what you're doing across town. Nor I think, or maybe if you were saying if there's a question about if there's a concern about possibly tracking even maybe people of color or whatever. This is about license plate, this is about Amber Alerts, this is about Silver Alerts, and this is about people that in the summer that are coming from all over to come to Mystic and Groton, and if we can catch some Amber Alert or Silver Alert or someone that's wanted from across the state, then why not? I don't think that, as long as we're following the law, I don't think we should be concerned about our privacy with this in particular.
Representative Katowski?
Okay, I'm sorry to press this, but so we're driving down Route 184 and 10 cars go by and the seventh car is stolen. So the police officer, nothing happens for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then ding, 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 ding? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay.
The alarm will go off,
Okay.
and he'll receive a message through his communication system
Okay.
saying the vehicle license plate that was just recorded is wanted for being stolen, or the operator is wanted in Massachusetts.
Okay. But 1 through 6, there's,
No, it's
got
just.
it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, are we ready for a vote on a resolution authorizing the State of Connecticut Office of Policy Management's Justice Assistance Grant, which will allow our police department to purchase an AutoView Sharp X license plate reader to be installed on a patrol car? All in favor of this, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion passes.
Obviously, he doesn't have any restriction.
The next item on our agenda, I believe, is our new ad hoc committee of outreach and community engagement. Chairman Massett, do you have a report?
The RTM Community Outreach and Engagement Committee met on Monday, January 28th, at 2019, at the Senior Center in Classroom A. Members present, Representative Casper, Representative Gustafson, who left the meeting at 7:45, Representative Katowski, Representative Miller, Representative Whitehouse, and Representative Massett, Chair. The meeting was called to order at 7:05. Committee members felt that the biggest problems facing the RTM in outreach to the community and our constituents is a lack of communication, a lack of understanding by the community of the role of the RTM, and a lack of the understanding of the form of government in Groton, specifically how Groton Town, Groton City, the Town Council, the RTM all work, either as separate entities or together. It was noted that even though Groton has a large military presence, there is not a lot of participation by our military neighbors. Discussion on how to improve that communication with our constituents and with the military. A lot of suggestions were discussed, but the committee felt that there were a lot of issues around freedom of information, how meetings are noticed and conducted. Because of these questions, the committee requests that the town clerk attend a future meeting to give the entire committee guidance on ways to reach out that are in compliance with current rules and regulations. Excuse me. The committee discussed possible goals. A liaison to our military families to keep them informed of the positive things that Groton has to offer. Meetings with constituents in all districts to discuss issues that they may have. Explore the use of electronic and print media targeted to specific districts. Coffee with the entire RTM. It was noted that we will all be involved in various committee meetings during the upcoming budget process, and that it will be difficult for the committee to meet. It was agreed that our next meeting will be February 25th at 7 p.m., and the chair will invite the town clerk to join us
Representative Whitehouse stated that he might not be able to attend due to a previous commitment. Meeting adjourned to 8:15 p.m.
Thank you. We have the minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Representative Bordelon, Representative Streeter is second. Any questions? No? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Thank you so much, Representative Massett. All right, so I think we'll have another meeting. That's February 25th? 25th. So again, if other members are interested in attending, please do join that group. Representative Washington?
I won't be able to attend the next meeting, but I noticed like when the sub-base and EB has commissionings, they invite the town council. I was wondering, you know, for community outreach, is it possible that they invite the RTM? If they can't invite the entire RTM, maybe 10 people can go, just so we can mingle with the community, just like the town council does. That's just a suggestion. I don't know if it's possible or not.
Idea. Only if it's in the summer.
That's a good idea. Along those lines, I wanted to add one thing that I just got a note from Councilor Heed, which is that the RTM is invited to join the town council and other elected officials to march in the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Mystic. I don't have any details on that, so we'll have to get that to you by email. Okay, so, sorry. Representative Wells.
Just a brief note about the military participation. Mark, I took the tour of the Groton Community Center, the former Fitch Middle School, former Fitch Junior High, former Fitch High, and he said that there are substantial contributions by the military to moving equipment and helping with Parks and Rec. So they're not absent, and probably over contribute compared to the rest of us.
Thank you. Yeah, the military does need to do community service. I know they're very engaged in a lot of other community activities, so you know they definitely serve this community. Representative Mello Miller, did you? Okay. Town clerk would like to speak.
I'm asking. Yeah. Okay. So we have a lot of educators on this body now, right this very moment. Perhaps a proposal could be presented to the Board of Ed for civics courses that teach, and perhaps if it could be organized, you could at least write a plan for that type of course for our government. So what form of government that we have? You know, between the minds that we have, great minds we have, we may be able to come with a curriculum type of course about the civics of our town.
Representative Streeter?
A long time ago, at least, there always was a civics course, and it was a required course for 9th graders. Now, I don't know if that has disappeared, or there used to be citizenships awards for 9th graders, too, so. Are you sure there's nothing there already, some program going on?
It's a state mandate. You have to consider.
Do you have a microphone?
Sorry,
I don't either. Sorry. I can throw it to you.
Yes, I'm pretty confident that it's still a state mandate that all civics are taught in our high schools in the state of Connecticut. I'm not sure if that's part of the curriculum for the RTM and how our local government structure is, but it should be.
Right.
At least when I teach it, it is. But
See, you've got the plan already.
Thank you. Any other thoughts about this new committee? No. Representative Bordelon?
Thank you. I was wondering if it's possible, we'd have to individually fund it, but coming up with some idea or something that we could even make so that if we did attend like a commissioning or was in a parade, like town councilors, a lot of them have shirts and things. I know that we don't have any funding, so it'd probably have to be self-funded, but you know, a way of, when we are doing community outreach, having either a nice pin or shirt or something saying your district maybe, and if we do decide to be in the parade, maybe coming together and, you know, maybe just figuring out a design of something we want to make that we could all wear. I don't know, just a thought.
Business cards. Brochure that I have looked at.
Thank you. Representative Mello Miller?
No, I'm sorry, just to comment to Representative Wells' point. I am the only serving member of the RTM that's a military spouse and involved in the military. And I know in the past, just really quickly, in the past, I know that we've had participation from the military community, and I think that we should really encourage participation, because here we have wonderful resources such as EB, such as military families look to Groton to retire here, and we have wonderful parks and rec. We have a wonderful community, and if they're looking to retire, and if we can encourage involvement, then they're going to feel connected to the town, as my family does, to settle down here. So in the future, if by recognizing military families and military members, and perhaps they're not voting right now, even if they're not voting now for our town, they're still contributing, they're still putting their tax tellers. And I think it's important to keep those connections open and even open them further to expand our town and really encourage more community participation. Sorry.
Thank
Participation.
All right, well, I don't know if we want to launch into any budget discussions, but if there, Representative Katowski.
Being that we're getting to that time of year. Okay, thanks. All right. Considering that the mill rate has increased 20.7% in the past 4 years, 2020 is the perfect time to give the taxpayers a break. Here are some items to consider regarding the 2020 budget. Last week, the superintendent implied that the Board of Ed 2019 budget was cut, and he was increasing the budget for 2020 to get back to where they were. This is not true. The 2019 budget was not cut. Due to MBR rules, the budget cannot be cut. In 2019, the Town Council reduced the Board of Ed proposed increase to the MBR. To be clear, that is not a cut. Reducing the proposed increase of any budget or line item is not a cut. While I appreciate the superintendent's overview last week of the 2020 budget, it was very disappointing to me that there was no mention of any effort to reduce spending, scale back, or reduce staff or programs, etc. As a town, we cannot do everything, have everything, or be everything. There is a limit to what the taxpayers can afford, and we have reached that limit. Also, last week, on another subject, the Town Council, last week it was suggested that the Town Council initiate a task force to study the needs in our community, look for alternate sources for the services, and then fill in the gap. The town may be misspending money just because it's how it's always been done. Here are some areas where we could see some cost efficiencies and savings. Social services is one area. Last year, there was mention of a social services study. Hopefully, the town will follow through. If they do follow through, I would like to see them research duplication and triplication of services and programs with the Board of Ed, Parks and Rec, Library, Senior Center, United Way, Dial 211, etc. Also, along the lines of not doing something just because of how we've always done it, there are some properties in town that should be reviewed to see if it makes fiscal sense to own and maintain them. The Parks and Rec Mansion in Noank, the Social Services Building, the Jabez Smith House, the former Noank School property, and the golf course. Selling these properties and getting them on the tax rolls will increase the grand list and should offer tax relief to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Katowski. Any other budget thoughts? Representative Massett?
This is just a request, and I know that you have a rule that folks can only speak twice.
On any one item.
Right, but I'm wondering if maybe during the budget process, if you would consider just letting that go away, because a lot of times when we are discussing something, I may have spoken to an issue twice, but then Representative Streeter may get up and say something, and I may either want clarification or whatever. Would you consider just during budget time to let it go?
You know, that's actually a Robert's Rules. It's not a moderator rule, so I didn't make it up. It's in Robert's Rules, and there's also a limit for each member to speak a maximum of 10 minutes. I would be happy to give both those up if people didn't speak, you know, a lot and keep us here until midnight, and I haven't found that to be the case. So I think I'm going to go with Robert's Rules, which is really our default in our own rules. That's what it says. So I do try to allow people to have follow-up questions, but you know, I would like to take this as a point to talk about that budget season, and I'd like to ask members to think about when they are speaking to, you know, listen to the other members, and if a point has been made, it may not be necessary to reiterate that point, or you could just say, I agree with Representative so-and-so. You only really have to make your point once, and we can be succinct about it. We also should remember, and I'm going to put this in the moderator's letters, that Rule 8.5.2 does say that questions that are made come through to me. They do not go to our speakers who are giving presentations. They come to me, and we need to be respectful of the folks who spend their time to come to this body. We need to be respectful to all members of this body, and so we need to kind of keep that in our minds when we go into this next budget season. So, you know, I think at this point, you know, that having people speak twice for a maximum of 10 minutes each time on any one budget item is sufficient. That doesn't limit you on different amendments. Every time we have another amendment to a budget item, people get more chances to talk. So I don't limit, it's not a limit on one item, it's a limit on every motion. So I think personally that that's sufficient. You know, if, you know, and considering how long our meetings went, I think it was sufficient. That's all I'll say. But, you know, if you disagree with me, there are means in Robert's Rules to override a moderator's decision, and certainly that can be done. Okay. Representative Washington?
Does that mean if we give you a question, you have to approve the question before it goes to the person?
What I want to do, to have less of our personal attacks on people who come to speak. We have to realize that if you read the rules of this RTM that this body created, it says in Rule 8.5.2 that questions from that body to any speaker either come to me or to the town manager. That's who we are questioning. Responses, you know, can be deferred to that speaker, but we are not in a position to hammer people that come to this body to give presentations, and that's really, there's me as a buffer, and I want to reiterate that. It's in our rules. I didn't make it up. I wasn't on that rules committee, but I think it's been on the rules in our rules for quite a while. So it's not a new rule. Representative Chase.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I would just like everyone to keep in mind when we're going through the budget process this year that we will be starting to pay for the new schools in 2020.
Thank you. Representative Whitehouse?
One thing I think might be valuable, based on my experience last year, is, I guess the best way to describe it, almost like a running tally. Because once we get into the weeds and we're going down through line items, it's kind of difficult to keep track of how much we have already cut or increased or changed or whatnot. So if there's some way to just kind of have kind of keep track of where we stand in the process.
We do that.
Yeah, but I mean, as we're making changes, you know, by day 5,
We do. We actually, we'll have a spreadsheet that's sent out regularly.
Mm-hmm.
It's an Excel spreadsheet. The numbers are in there from the council, committee of the whole, and then RTM committees, their numbers, and then each time the full body of the RTM makes a change, or, a decision, it's listed
Yeah.
also. That we keep that. After every meeting, we update it and send it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a spreadsheet. It's just an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, yeah, I guess because there wasn't a total, it was kind of hard for me to keep track of where we were on the big picture, but.
It's right there.
but
It's there at the
there
very
was a
bottom, you
total
can
on the-
see. You can see what the
Okay.
total is.
All right, I might be misremembering that, but I was just say that seemed like, because I know we talked big picture at this point about how, we don't want to raise taxes more than a certain amount or whatever, and then once we're in the weeds, I think we kind of forget about where we are in the big picture, because, we don't want to give up this thing, we don't want to give up this thing, we don't want to give up this thing, but before we know it, we get to the end, and we are putting through most of what the town council budget was. I'm not sure what the solution to that would be, but.
Thank you. Any other thoughts on the upcoming budget season? No? I don't believe we have any other business, but is there any other business? What? Thank you. We have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thanks. Happy Valentine's Day. See you next month.